welcome, very welcome to this first podcast of this season 2025. We are here just starting again with the European cluster talks, and that's a very interesting approach we will have here today because today, as a guest, we have Thomas Röhr. He's been working not only with several clusters, but at the same time, he's been, I want to say, the initiator, I would say you put the stepping stone to be able to create this meta cluster called EACN that probably we'll be talking to today. That we start, how many clusters we start, Thomas? Like 5, 6 clusters, right?
Yeah, hello, Josep. First of all, it's a very pleasure to be with you. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
and yes, actually, we have 32 clusters today from 17 European countries.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And we start only like 5, 6 clusters, right? Like 4 years ago, was it?
We start much longer because we start the whole history started in 2018 with 8 clusters.
8 clusters.
Who more or less knew each other from previous projects, frame program 7, 8, and so on. And at that time, there was a rumor that within these European strategic cluster partnership programs, there would be funding dedicated to cluster networks. That was somehow the initiation, the kickoff to start this collaboration between clusters. And then 6 of these 8 applied to the European Automotive Cluster Network for Joint Industrial Modernization Investment Project. That has been funded by the European Commission. And as one action of this project, we suggested to the European Commission to open the network to other clusters. And that has been done in the end of 2018. Yes, end of 2018. And then started the history.
This being said, it's like a very quick resume of what happened. Thomas Röhr here, he's a professor at the university, right? You are an expert on applying to European projects. I would say you're way well known on the different European calls. And I would say you have probably a unique vision of what are the clusters are doing and what are the best practices that makes, I would say, a cluster from a survival cluster to let's say an excellent cluster, right? An excellent cluster. And today I would like to explore because Thomas, you probably work with a lot of us. I'm really glad to be working with a person like you because I think you have a unique know-how and at the same time unique talent. Because to put together at the very beginning, a few years ago, 8 clusters to collaborate among them to create something together is something that it's not that easy, even it's quite easy to be said. And at the same time, in few years to get this scale up at the point that we are right now at plus 30 clusters in this European network, it's I think it's amazing. What would you say are the main factors that make that possible at the beginning and create this evolution that we have in this very few years?
It's I think when we started to discuss or to contact other classes at the beginning, there was a huge awareness with all of them that collaboration could bring added value to them. And I don't remember any cluster we contacted that said, no, I'm not interested at that moment, at least. Yeah, so the first 8 ones. And everybody was kind of enthusiastic to join this adventure. At that moment, was not sure that it will end up as it ended or as it is today. Yeah, so and then very, very fast, as said, 6 of them applied for this EACP project funded, which is kind of a precursor of the Euroclusters project from today. Yeah? And we got the funding to do something together. And I think that's the main advantage finally. And everybody saw that collaborating across borders could bring real added value.
But let me ask you, Thomas, when you approach those clusters, when you approach us, what was the main argument that you gave us that you would say that was the key argument that most of us, I mean, having funding from the European Commission, that's an argument. That's good. That's good. We all like funding. That's clear. But out of that, what would be the main argument that you think was the one of the key elements for most of us?
At that moment, I just started working for Pôle Véhicule du Futur, which is the French local automotive cluster here, and had the mission to relaunch European activities. So they had projects in the past, and then all projects came to an end. People left, and then there was no experience anymore, and they asked me to do that. So that was how it started. And I said the main argument at the very beginning was actually funding, because there was this rumor that when you create this kind of strategic partnerships, then there will be dedicated calls to those strategic partnerships. And that was when we said, okay, if this is really the case, we need to have our own strategic network to get access to this funding, because it looked like funding would be easier to get than in competition with Soviet Union. Well, finally, this didn't happen. But this was really the I think the starting point, and probably the main argument at the beginning, to have something to access to this, to easier access to European funding as a cluster, because there are a lot of European research programs and funding programs, but very few are dedicated to clusters. Very few have activities where cluster can play their part in these projects. Often, what we see is that clusters take over something like communication and dissemination, but are not really, let's say, contributing to the content of these projects. And that's why these strategic partnerships looked interesting for clusters. So,
funding is one of the key elements, right?
Yeah, for me, this was a key element at the beginning. And then the fact that the clusters already knew each other and already had done projects together before, this was kind of very helpful, because each one knew each other. So perhaps not the persons, because as I said, I just arrived, but the clusters at least knew each other, and that made it easier somehow to cooperate and to exchange. And then most of these clusters, now some clusters are from France, some clusters are from Germany, and that's probably one advantage, was that I could discuss in German with the Germans and in French with the French, and in English with all the rest. But this helped also at the beginning to overcome some barriers.
For me, one of the things that amazed me, Thomas, is that first, on our every other month meeting that we have, almost every member attends those meetings. And that's something that amazed me, to be honest, because I'm part of some other meta clusters or councils or whatever you're gonna call it. And one of the main things that amazed me is that almost everyone attended. And also when we have our general assemblies, I would say that again, almost every one of the plus 30 clusters attends the general assembly. This is something that really amazed me, which leads me to thinking that probably that what we are exchanging, the guidelines that you prepare with Bruno and everything, they're probably really interesting, very on topic, and that's not easy, Thomas, I would say.
It's you're right. So we have to distinguish between, I would say, three types of events. We have our executive board, where really all members are generally present. So every second month, as you said. Then we have the General Assembly, which is a more technical thing. We are not an association legally, but we are organized as an association, and this General Assembly is somehow our main important event in the year, but it's kind of technical stuff. Let's say like this, yeah. And then we have the other events like our EACN coffee breaks, like
coffee breaks, right?
And this kind of events, where we see mainly the same people, really. So and not all the clusters are taking advantage of these events. Unfortunately, this is probably, I think, due to the fact that the clusters do not have dedicated people to EACN. Yeah, so those who are attending are those who are on top of the cluster managers, are interested in European questions and in getting in contact with the others and so on. And so these are very often the same people and the same clusters attending these events. But in general, seeing that EACN is how much, 98% virtual meetings, the participation is really good, especially participation. Also, if I send a mail out with some kind of request from one member to the others and so on, there are always some clusters who answer within the day. Yeah, and this is really, really active participation. Even if some clusters are more and others are less, okay, but that's in every network it's the same. So it's not something I'm really shocked about. Let's say like this. Yeah? So on average, I think we have a very good community, and we saw this also when we met in Brussels during the European Cluster Conference last year.
Yeah.
Also, something like 24 or 25 of these 30 plus clusters have been present, and we had our dinner in the evening, and it was really a great evening, a great event, and the community inside, we just met twice for the moment, yeah. So in 4 years, we just met twice physically. The community is working, and the people. My impression is the people. We are not just colleagues; we're a little bit more than colleagues already within this network, yeah, and within all these clusters, at least me with the other clusters. Whether this is the same between the clusters is perhaps something else.
I would say in some cases, it depends most if you are participating or you participate in the past in some kind of assembled project, European project, or any other kind of project. I think that helps a lot to create this unity or this feeling that we are more than collaborators. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I like this kind of European collaboration. So European projects, and that's something I like very much. So that helps a lot.
a lot. One of the things also that I saw on the and it's something that also happens in our cluster, in the automotive cluster here in Catalonia, is that the working groups are not the same, I would say, in the last few years. I remember like 7, 8, 9 years ago in our cluster, we had working groups per each strategic area or commission or whatever you want to call it. And they used to work very nicely. They used to meet every month, or in some cases every other month, but most of them every month. They used to meet physically in the same room. And I would say that after the pandemic, many things changed, I would say, and not only because of the virtual meetings through Teams or Zoom or the platform that you'll be using, but also the availability of the people. For me, it shift. I don't know if you share this vision, because for me, I remember like 8 years ago, 6 years ago, something like that. It was quite easy to just prepare every month a meeting, and I remember some of our commissions had 80, 100, 120 people that every month take the car, move to a place, attend a 1 hour, 1 hour and a half meeting, and then go back to their office. And right now, today, that's almost impossible for us to manage. And I see that also, despite that I think we are doing pretty nice work at the EACN. And also, I would say in our cluster, we develop a lot of projects, private, public funded, but at the same time, the way we create the projects, the way the ideas of the projects are put together, the needs are put together, it shifts drastically dramatically in the last few years, and I think we need to move to new ways to exchange or to collaborate on this connection. I don't know if you saw the same. I don't know if you share this opinion.
EACN just started in the COVID period. Yeah, so we officially launched it in 2021. So just after COVID, but we invited the other clusters in the end of 2018. So it was just before COVID, and I sometimes say COVID was a huge chance for EACN because we just met all together when this pandemic came up with a lot of very, very agile decisions to take, to help everybody, to coordinate the support and whatever and so on.
Exchange information, right.
Exchange of information. We had also the drop with the car sales, or even the stop of production and sales networks and so on and so on. So on the one hand, clusters at that moment had a lot of work because they somehow moderated, animated their network to help the hospitals, to help whoever, to help their members too. And on the other hand, there was a huge pressure to think about, okay, what's coming next? Yeah, and that's why I say this was somehow perhaps kind of chance that we just started at that moment, because that brought us all very close together. We had meetings every second week at that moment.
I remember that.
We had a strategic paper with our 9 EACN theses, including this kind of European circular economy idea. Yeah, so design, produce, use, and recycle cars in Europe, for Europe, and so on. Where we will perhaps come now again with these war tensions that are coming up and these block buildings, perhaps that we really came to this kind of situation. And that was a starting point, and was a very strong boost for our network. Yeah. And then we started also, as you said, we started with 4 or 5 working groups at the beginning. But working groups only work if you have a leader who's behind.
Yeah,
and
that's right. That's right.
That was a big problem. As already said, no cluster has kind of 10% dedicated workload to EACN or something like this. So these are people who are doing this because they see the personal added value, or because they are interested to speak with the people. And this is not enough if you want to have workshop or working group leader. Then this is not enough. And that's why finally the working groups did not really work. What we're trying to do today is setting up small working groups with a focused target, with a focused goal. So to produce something within the next 4 or 5 months, something like this, and with a result to be produced, and not just working group to have as a discussion platform. Does not.
Yeah.
And the reason behind that is probably that since COVID, the automotive industry, the companies, are much more under pressure than before. Sales did not rise. We were still not above, or still below what we had pre-corona period. With sales, we have a strong pressure, especially with electric vehicles from China and from Asia, and a very huge pressure on the companies, and that's why probably they are prioritizing their own problems and their own workload before joining this kind of workshops.
Yeah,
are interesting, but which are not directly contributing to their daily business.
I think that's one of the huge challenges. Actually, a few days ago, I was discussing with my board of directors that maybe, because we have the same situation in our cluster, I think it's just a reflection of what you described right now. And we had discussing maybe we should shift from a commission leader or working group leader to a strategic committee. Like you have a small group of people leading this working group or something like that. and at some in some ways I like it because you don't rely only on one person, as you said. No one has actually nowadays, especially in our industry, no one has the time to spend 5-10% of their weekly or monthly hours to a non-profit entity nowadays. And there's a lot of pressure, especially on the times that we are living right now after the COVID, because the crisis that we are just starting right now, or the transformation we are just starting right now, it's I think it's gonna give us in the next 2-3 years a very new reality on the table, especially here in Europe. But we had been discussing if maybe shifting from a, a person leading the committee, to have leading, sorry, the working group, to have a small committee, a small group of people leading this the same working group or committee or strategic area. And for me, there was something missing there, to be honest, Thomas, because I think to have someone, sometimes you have to make decisions, right? You have to decide, yes, no, right, left, up, down. We move forward, we wait. So, but at the same time, to have a small group, I'm talking about 4, 5, 6 people, not more than that. It's could be quite dynamic at the same time. And if maybe for some reason, in one meeting or for a small period of time, few months, or two people have some kind of urgency inside their company, or they just left the company, that something happens all the time, right? You can keep the knowledge of the working group that's leading this initiative. And there's something that we are being exploring, maybe to introduce it, maybe to have a small, like a strategic committee per each strategic area. And at the same time, maybe because we still feel that some kind of leadership is necessary there, maybe we could just rotate the leadership every 6 months, something like that, but to keep it in this small committee. But it is something that new that we are just exploring as an alternative.
Yeah, I don't know how it's working in other clusters. We never discussed this one within the network, whether they have working groups and whether they are still functioning as before, whether they change. On EACN level, we more think, I would call them more about task force. Yeah, so yes, 4 or 5 people from different clusters who get the mission to work on, I don't know, on a given report, to look for best practices or something like this, and build some kind of final document to be presented to the board and the community later on. So this is not really working groups on a given topic for the next 5 years, but only, we had, I don't know, last year we had this Draghi
report,
for example.
Yeah.
We could have thought about, setting up a task force, thinking about, what can we clusters do to respond to this report, or to which of these ideas can we use for our members, something like this. We haven't done this one, but this would be, for example, some idea. Yeah? Or, I don't know, perhaps we prepared an answer for this, for the public consultation on the strategic dialogue for the future of the European automotive industry, which is ongoing by the European Commission at the moment. But that has been done more with a survey to all members, and then we discussed this inside the executive board, because the time was so short that it was not possible to set up kind of a task force to do this outside the board. But yeah, if you have something, an important topic that's not so important that you need the answer next week, but which has something like several months to be prepared, then we can do this in this kind of task force.
Now you mentioned the Draghi report and also this consultation, because the next, I think it's on the 5th of March, right? It's going to be the presentation. Yes. Exactly, with Apostolos. It's going to be very, very interesting, and I would say not only the automotive industry, but many industries. I think it's going to be transformed, and here in Europe in the next few years. And those days, here in Spain, the 8 automotive clusters we made very regularly. I would say every week, we with one project or another one, we met and we discussed. And one of the main things that we are discussing is what's our role as a cluster? What's our participation as a cluster on all this transformation? Because in our companies, some of them are having huge difficulties, and some of them are approaching huge opportunities as well. So when all these kind of periods like the one we are facing right now emerge in the horizon, this one I would say is not only in the horizon, I would say it's pretty close right now, right? The Draghi report do not mention exclusively the automotive industry, despite it's one of the big industries in Europe, right? But the industry, in general speaking, in Europe, I think the classes we need to size what's our role, what's our play in all this transformation. How are we going to support our companies, our industries for this transformation, for the ones that they are rising and for the ones that they are just I don't know, emerging, or maybe in some kind of fusions. I think we need to reconsider our role here. Yeah. Yeah.
Personally, my personal point of view is clusters are the representatives of the SMEs, of tier 2 and lower, because the OEMs have ASEA, the tier 1 have Clipper, even if there are also some tier 2 and so, but they're dominated by the big ones. But the lower ones, so tier 2 and lower, they are not represented, they are not heard, and they are the ones who are the most struggling, at least in the automotive value chain. So all cluster, or most cluster, or many clusters have OEMs within their members.
Yeah.
And that makes it a little bit political. So you cannot take a clear position for one group against the other group, because
absolutely that's a big challenge.
Clusters are depending from their contributions, financial, personal, and so on, from the big ones. So this makes it a little bit difficult. EACN is not a lobby organization. Yeah, so our aim is to help each other to become better, to discover new services others are trying, and to implement them, to bring more added value to the members. But sometimes, and with a public consultation, we've done this one. We have to take a position and publish this one too. But it's kind of difficult, difficult situation not to bless one group for the other. Yeah,
for the other one. Yeah,
and especially if we look on the automotive industry, and if you look on these SMEs, for example, so the tier 2 and lower. Yeah, I'm not speaking about the big ones. Yeah, so I speak about the smaller ones. They are used by the big ones, and they have very low margins. There's no possibility to invest in new tools. There is no possibility to follow this greening, and if they do, they are a little bit more expensive. So purchasing is externalized to other low-cost countries outside Europe or to Asia and so on, or even the whole plant is moved outside Europe. Yeah, the whole production line. So that's a difficult. And if this supplier network is not existing anymore, then there's no need to have the plants in Europe anymore. So everything's gone. Yeah, so that's why it's so, in my point of view, it's important to strengthen this supplier network and to help them to answer to the current challenges, to help them find new markets, perhaps also because some of them are just producing parts for combustion engines, and tomorrow there's no need for these parts anymore. So we need also to help them to find new markets, or to change their production model and to adapt to this new market, electric vehicle market, or perhaps hydrogen vehicle markets. I don't see huge markets for e-fuels and this kind of things. So I think the future will be battery and hydrogen. These are the two I see. But this is my personal That's
Mm-hmm.
not an EACN point of view.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the main role of clusters today is helping SMEs, tier 2 and lower, to survive, to get
Yeah,
access to
yeah.
funding, to be heard on European level, and somehow to be defended against their customers.
Yeah, I would say that at some point the clusters we end up becoming like an extension of the SMEs, as you mentioned, right? They size some possible financing tools through us. They size what's the strategic view that's happening on the market. They try to anticipate what's happening on autonomic, national, and European regulations. So somehow we become like an extension of their company, and on the gaps they have on their companies. If they don't have, like, I don't know, I'm thinking right now about regulations regarding the cybersecurity, right? The NIS2 that is about to be implemented here in Spain, and we become somehow the way they have to like look at and try to see as far as possible. I think clusters can play a very, very important role for the SMEs. I mean, for us, I think we have around, I don't want to mistake it, but around 84% of our members are SMEs. So we have a huge number of them in our cluster. And probably it's more or less on all the clusters, a number around this number. And I think it's very, very important to, as you mentioned, of course, you need to have some product services for the big ones, but the main focus, as you very clearly mentioned, it's the SMEs. I think that's one of the big things to keep it in mind. And it's not always easy, because the SMEs, they need sometimes in some periods, I think especially in periods that we are facing right now in the automotive industry, but other industries probably just face it or they are about to face it. The SMEs are the ones, they are more delicate, they are more sensitive, they are more suitable to fail if they are not taken care of very carefully, right?
Yeah, I fully agree. And Europe is using the cluster somehow to give funding to SMEs through these Euro cluster projects, for example. And that's one thing. Yeah, this is. I always think the clusters should have their own long-term vision about sector and mobility in transport in general, without being too much influenced by the OEMs. So this vision of clusters should not necessarily reflect the business vision of the OEMs, which is not the same as what should be or could be the best solution for society. Yeah? And it's also a difficult situation, because if you have two OEMs in your government board, then to publish a vision which is perhaps not in line with their business vision, it's not easy. Yeah, so this kind of, but for me, this is a role of clusters somehow also to look ahead and not to have only this business vision in mind, because we are not a lobby organization for our big OEMs. They already have this ones and enough stuff to do this for themselves. And so that's somehow what clusters should do, and perhaps also try to influence their OEMs, which is
kind of we can try it. Actually, right now we have here in Catalonia we have one big OEM, which is Seat from Volkswagen Group, but we used to have also Nissan for many years, both of them in our board. Right now we have three OEMs, but the other two are just emerging. So they are not, I will not say they are small, because they are not small, but they are not Volkswagen Group, right? But I think it's a big challenge that we have there. And especially right now that we are few days ago from what's happening in Europe. And I think it's going to be very, very interesting to oversee and try to anticipate how to support the companies there. Something that happens to me, Thomas, sometimes is that when because as you mentioned as well, we I'm not going to say interfere, but we have vision at three very different levels, or four maybe. One, we have vision at European level through EACN. We also talk with our Euro candidates in Brussels from the government. So you have a vision on what's happening in Europe, but from the time that Europe makes a decision next 5th of March, right, to the time that this decision has a concrete impact in our SMEs, there's a long period of time.
A long time.
You know what I mean? So I remember last time when the next generation funds were decided and announced in Europe. In Spain, it took 2 years from that point to have the first call that actually was for the automotive industry, the first call from our government. So it's 2 years that you are talking to your SMEs and you are telling the same story. Oh, Europe approved some funding, it's gonna be coming.
Yeah.
But you have been saying that for 2 years. 2 years, it's a long period of time.
Yeah, but
right?
That's one of the points the Draghi report is pointing out, saying 20 months to get a law or regulation voted is much too long. When it's voted, it's already old. It's already it's not up to date anymore. So this is a huge problem.
It is.
On the 5th of March, to come back to this public consultation and to this strategic dialogue, is if you look at the core group, there are only OEMs, Tier 1, the OEM and Tier 1 representatives, so ASEA and CLIPA, and some unions in this group. There is no Tier 2 in this group. There is no public actor. Automotive Regions Alliance, for example, or these automotive regions.
That's quite concerning, to be honest.
They are not represented in this dialogue. So what I fear is that the action plan is built or sharpened to the OEMs and not to the whole value network. Yeah, I'm not speaking about value chain, I'm speaking about value network, because most of the suppliers are having commercial links with many OEMs or Tier 1. And I think that's a main danger, is that the rest of this network is not considered, and that all these actions will only support the big ones and not the small ones.
Of course, that at some point, if you support the big ones, at some point this funding to the big ones should arrive as well to the middle ones and to the small ones, but it's going to be even slower than the other.
What we said at the beginning, for most of the big ones, the price is the only criteria to select, and then price is always cheaper in low-cost countries, in China, even if they have to transport it. You know?
That's a big challenge. Actually, here, what we are doing here in Catalonia, we are preparing, of course, with joint forces with our government, local government. We are trying to prepare some fundings for the meantime. So, because we assume it's going to take some time from Europe to Spain, and Spain to launch these packages or whatever the solutions are, right? And we are trying to ask our government for the next year, 2 years, hopefully not more than 2 years. Hopefully, let's cross fingers, and to prepare some packages to impact, especially on the SMEs. Actually, the packages that we have prepared to our government are to impact directly on the SMEs, because, as you said, that's the weakest point of the chain, right, of the value chain. And you have to be very careful, because if you have a problem with one of your tier 2 or tier 3, some of them they hold a very key part of the car, and they can stop the full value chain, right? And you have to be very careful with that. We had a situation with our colleagues in Galicia a few months ago that almost stopped the I'm not going to say whole Europe, but probably 60 or 70% of Europe will be stopped because of this supplier had a very particular situation. And Yeah, that's very risky. So we really need to impact on the SMEs. But that's not easy for us, to be
Yeah,
honest.
but what I think what's important for Europe, Europe has this ambition to be climate neutral in 2050, isn't it, or 24 or 2050? And
I don't know. They changed it a few times. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, but this is not working if you look only on the big ones. We have
Mm,
thousands and thousands of SMEs which are still using machines that are 100 years old, yeah, more or less. Perhaps not really, but you know what I want
let's
to
say
say.
50 years old. Yeah, it's
And
still, yeah.
so they are not up to date. They are not able, well, they are perhaps still able to produce quality as needed, but with a
Hmm.
lot of energy, with a lot of waste, with a lot of people, so expensive. And that means, okay, the volumes are going down because it's switched to other countries. And either they leave the automotive sector or they die, or we are able to help them that they can renew their production lines and produce cleaner, faster, more flexible, and whatever
Hmm.
in the future. And then they become competitive again. Yeah?
Hmm.
So,
Exactly.
okay, what we don't know yet is, okay, if these commercial tensions, this block building is growing, we will see kind of reply to Europe, because these global supply chains risk to be really, really disturbed again after
Hmm.
COVID. First time, then when Russia invaded Ukraine, we had the same situation with these kind of supply chain disruption. And are these trade tensions that are coming up now are creating again this kind of supply chain disruptions? We
Hmm.
don't know yet. But if this is happening, then there is an urgent need to reconcentrate all this supply in Europe to just to
Hmm.
be able to produce, because as you said, there are some semiconductors missing and production stops for something which is big like a €1 piece. Yeah, so
Absolutely, absolutely, and especially if this supplier is outside from Europe, then the bigger is even the problem is even bigger for the OEMs. Yeah,
yeah,
for the whole value chain. If the supplier is here in Europe, at least you have it locally, and you can try to support or to help to solve the problem. But if the supply is in Korea or China or wherever other area, I remember we had a problem in Volkswagen in Seat with some a couple of years ago with kind of some part of some sub components manufacturer. I think was in Argentina, and it was very difficult to solve it. And yeah, it's been crazy, but I'm not sure what's going to be the dynamics here because okay, next 5th of March there's going to be this announcement. Of course, all the classes we're going to prepare some kind of report or whatever to try to explain to our members, most of them SMEs, what Europe prepare and everything. But what's happening is that most of my SMEs say, yeah, okay, but what's it for me? I mean, I'm an SME. I'm I don't know, like 150 people here. And my turnover is around, I don't know, 12, 15, 20 millions per year. So I'm very small. So how is that going to solve me, especially in our sector right now? You know it better than me. In our sector right now, the main problem, it's not the new projects because there are a lot of new projects,
mhm,
but the delay on the new projects. So how is these solutions are going to impact in the short term because I have to pay my my checks next month,
sure,
my payrolls next month. I made some investments on some, I don't know, like machinery or yeah, or some kind of production lines, and the volumes are not the ones that we expected, and probably will never be. And this is the day-to-day problems in most of the clusters. I mean, I'm talking about some examples of the automotive industry, but probably in some other industries are very similar in Europe right now because, as the Draghi
sure,
report that we mentioned before, I think it's not a situation only in the automotive industry, but all industry in Europe right now happening. And some people fear that the solution to that is going to be that the Chinese companies will be buying in a very cheap price the manufacturing facilities from European manufacturers. You know what I mean? And that's something that really concerns to them. And as a cluster, I'm not sure what we can do about that, to be honest.
Yeah, okay. I think this foreign direct investments. So if a Chinese company buys some kind of facilities or creates new facilities in Europe, can have positive impact too. It's employment.
In terms of employment, absolutely,
and
absolutely.
So on, yeah, and so that's. I won't say that is by definition a bad thing, but if this helps saving a company, might be positive too, on the condition that they are not just using it to take out intellectual property and so on, and then once everything's empty and once everything has been transferred, then they close it. So that's something that must be avoided. But I think foreign direct investments is something that can have also positive impacts, and I'm not so opposite to this one.
Absolutely. And actually, I think that, I know because it happens to us that as a cluster, we have a huge role there. I would say not every month, but probably 8, 9 of the 12 months of the year, I'm supporting my government to meet some international companies considering Catalonia as an investment place for maybe buying a company or maybe buying a green field to develop an industry there. So I think that we have, as a cluster, we have a big role there to support the industry in our local area to be attractive, to attract those investments. And that's, I think, one of the big roles that we have as a cluster to prepare. Right now, for instance, we are preparing like a catalog from our capabilities. My colleagues in Valencia, they already did it. Jackie already did it, so I'm just copying her and to develop to prepare a catalog as well as she did, because she did a very nice job with that. So we are just taking it as a reference and trying to prepare it, because nowadays I think it's one of the big things to attract investments here. But at the same time, go on. Yeah.
When you speak about these competences, do you speak about competence from your cluster or from your members?
Members, yeah, members, yeah. So we prepare this catalog. Jackie did an amazing job there. So you prepare, you just kind of identify every company, their main advantages of the company. If they're, despite of the clients, they have the capabilities, they have the vision, they have the R plus D plus I, they have. So you have a very nice vision there. And she did it on a PDF, and we are thinking maybe a PDF. I think it's amazing. And at the same time, if you can create something interactive, which is make it even easier, it's going to be something amazing to help the investments to realize what you can find in the region. Not only companies, but also like technological centers, universities, and, so I think it's a very interesting work that as a cluster we can do on all this transformation period that we are facing right now, because otherwise, as you mentioned, I think if we attract investments, okay, maybe the decision-making process is not here, maybe it's in China or Korea or United States or wherever the headquarters are, but at the same time, you are generating employment, you are generating new opportunities. But, and here there's a big but there are other countries in East Europe and also in North Africa which are way more attractive than we are. And that's a huge thing. That's a huge thing, Thomas. Yeah. And I think here as a clusters, I'm not sure there's much that we can do, because these North African countries, their governments are very focused on attracting investments, very focused. And we've been there in a few times in the last few years. And when you go back 1 year after another one and after another one, you see that in few months they made a huge improvement, not only in infrastructures but also on investment politics, and they are getting there. and they're really attractive, to be honest.
Yeah. That's one of the problems we addressed in our answer to the public consultation. Because Europe put duties on unfair support to the Chinese automotive industry from the government and so on. And as we can see that these actors are moving to North Africa and in some other countries to go around these duties so that they can import their cars without paying these duties. So one of our suggestions was to open it and to say, okay, each car which comes from outside Europe and benefited from this kind of unfair subsidies should be included in this process, and not only those produced in China, to protect our local European in the automotive industry. So this is something that we see clearly, and that's a real danger, because on top it's 100 kilometers from here, from your side at least, not from my one, but from your side. It's not far. It's just the other side of the Mediterranean Sea. So transport is nothing somehow. Yeah, and that's a real risk that then European markets will be flooded by these cars, which also benefit from this kind of unfair subsidies, very favorable working conditions, tax conditions, and so on, because what this comes with these investments that are attracted to these countries, and that's a real danger. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, this is something that I think at least we have to monitorize it, and I'm not sure if we can anticipate somehow. It's something that we have been discussing with the other Spanish automotive cluster. If there's somehow we can anticipate or be part of it, but not only as a cluster, but as an ecosystem. If there's some way that we can join forces, because that it's going to be happening with or without us, and we are trying to think, trying to imagine what would it mean to be with us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we're trying to anticipate what kind of role that will benefit our members we can play on this transformation, because you cannot go against progress. I think that's like, hitting a wall. So you cannot do that. But at the same time, you cannot just, stay outside just looking at it. So you need to be part of it somehow. And this is some of the things that we are trying to figure out right now. And actually tomorrow morning, we'll be discussing this as one of the main topics among us. And maybe that's something we could even discuss at EACN, maybe in one of the coffee breaks. I don't know.
Yeah, we can for sure we can discuss this one. The main decisions that influence the whole ecosystem are taken by the OEMs. Yeah, and then perhaps the tier one, but the tier ones are only following the OEM. So if a European OEM is shifting production to these low-cost countries for economic reasons, so it's not because it's against Europe, it's just for economic reasons, then the whole rest of the ecosystem is suffering. That's something where we as clusters, I think, we do not have a lot of influence at all. These are just business-driven decisions without looking on social impact, business, economic impact in Europe, and so on. They are looking their own benefits, their own market, and if they think something is good for them, then they are doing it independently of the impact on others. That's why it's
right now we have
for clusters. That's
why
please
go on.
It's very difficult for clusters to develop kind of solutions, because even in your case, you have Volkswagen once in Barcelona, but the decisions are taken in Wolfsburg. They are not taken in Barcelona. We have Stellantis, born here, created here, or Peugeot at least locally, but today's decisions are taken in the Netherlands. So, and they even don't know where Montbéliard is, where Peugeot has been created.
That's right, 100%. That's something that to be seen, and to be anticipate. For me, the most controversial here is that from one hand, what we are seeing, especially with the United States, but also in China and other countries, is this national sentiment, this national thinking about I have to focus on my territory, and I'm gonna do whatever is best for me, despite the rest of the world. But at the same time, we know for experience, huge experience, that collaboration and thinking way beyond yourself is the way to move to the future. So this, like looking at myself strategy that some of the countries are approaching for survival reasons, as you already mentioned, it's going to be a short-term politics that it's going to have a huge impact in the long term. And this is something that, to be honest, it concerns me, because okay, we might survive, but at what cost? You know what I mean? And that's something that to be seen. And for the classes, for me and for my colleagues, not only for the automotive classes, but with the other classes, we collaborate here in Catalonia and the other areas in Spain and Europe. Collaboration is the key, right? So if we start just looking for ourselves, collaboration has no part in it. And we are losing part of our DNA. And I'm not talking only philosophically, but also on the way we do things. And this is something that could have a huge impact, and even stepping back on our progress, I would say. And it's something to be seen. Something to be seen.
Yeah, we need to get some kind of more entrepreneurship spirit in Europe. Sometimes the impression is that we have a lot of bureaucracy, that's for sure, but a lot of this bureaucracy also protects people, protects environment, protects the companies. So taking off all these regulations is probably not such a good idea neither. Making them easier is probably the way we have to do it. Taking off all those who are already 50 years old and who don't make any sense anymore, but they are still there because each year we add new regulations, but we never take off the old ones or update the old ones somehow. So creating an easier environment for entrepreneurs is main important thing, I think. And the other thing is that despite the fact that we have Europe and European regulations, each country is implementing this European regulation differently, meaning that a company who's active in one country and wants to sell to the neighbor country still has to fulfill other requirements and so on. And that's why we always speak about the European single market, but it's not a single market.
No.
So yes, we don't have border controls. Yes, we don't have taxes when we go from one country to the other. But we have a lot of other regulations and burdens that are still there. So we are not, and that's a strength of China with its huge market. That's a strength of US with one market. Even if they are smaller than Europe in a whole, but it's really one market. You create a company in Spain. It's not the same as a company in Germany. Or if you want to sell in Germany, you have to create a second one in Germany and the third one in France. And that's why it's so complicated, and that's why it's so expensive. And that's why startups going to the US. That's why they are staying here and not developing their business here, because it's too complicated.
We'll see. Hopefully, we'll learn from our mistakes, right? Hopefully, we'll learn and we'll do some approach. I think we don't have an alternative. We need to learn from those mistakes, and if we really want to still be a representative part of the industrial worldwide here in Europe, we need to evolve, and we need to do it very quickly. Otherwise,
the only barrier should be the language barrier that remains, because this one we won't change this one. But unless we'll have other barriers, if you want to make business with another European country, this is not working. But if you look on the politicians, a lot of them are just blaming Europe for all they decide in Europe. So that makes not really let's not really hope that it will change rapidly, this one. So,
Absolutely. Actually, here in Spain, despite the regulations on sustainability and climate in Europe were high, here in Spain, we decide, I don't know why, we decide to over-regulate. So even here in Spain, they are even higher from the rest of Europe. It's like a crazy situation.
yes, yeah. But that's in for many regulations in many countries, it's the same. Yeah. So and that
we need
makes
to see that and see. I don't know. I'm really expecting something from the presentation that we'll be having in a few days. On the 5th of March, we'll see what happens there. And for us, it's gonna. I mean, this weekend. I think it's this weekend we have the elections in Germany, right?
Yes.
And exactly. Then in few days we'll have this announcement from the European Commission. And I think after that, I think most of us, clusters, companies, governments, we need to take few days of reflection to consider what's going to be our next steps. And I think we need to be very careful with these next steps because I mean I think there's big things on the table that will depend on that.
Yeah. I think
Okay, Thomas. Okay, so I think we already crossed the 1 hour mark that we set up I mean, not as a goal, but as a timetable. Thomas, we discussed many things, very interesting. I think that the most interesting things are to come. We'll see. But anyway, thank you very much for being with us, sharing your opinions, especially your know-how on this amazing topic with our classes. Thank you very much for your time, and see you soon.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Okay, thank you. And see you in the next episode. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.